more I think about the offseason, the more I think that the Raptors are just going to keep the status quo, keep the core together, and give it one more year, give it one more shot, and try it out with this team. And part of the reason I feel that way did also come from the head coaching search, which we'll segue into now because we had some major updates in the Raptors head coaching search in the last 24 hours that we need to break down. So, I believe it was the last time I did a stream, but I did a video as well where I talked about the finalists named in the head coaching search. And it appeared as though, specifically, there were 4 people involved with the finalists, maybe more as well, but it seemed like there were at least 4 people involved in the finalists of the head coaching search for the Toronto Raptors. That was Sergio Scariolo, that was Kenny Atkinson, that was Steve Nash, and that was Jordi Fernandez. And the more I learned about the coaches, the more I did not want the Raptors to get Steve Nash, and the more I wanted them to hire Fernandez. Fernandez is the associate head coach of the Sacramento Kings, was a driving force in building the half-court offensive machine that was the Sacramento Kings this season, has experience developing players in the G League, has had a wealth of experience with different teams, has worked under Mike Brown in 2 different stints, one in Cleveland, now in Sacramento, has worked under Michael Malone, Denver head coach, was successful over there, was a G League head coach, was pursuing a PhD in sports psychology. I think the psychology behind the athlete is one of the most important things that makes a great player, especially in the NBA when it's so percentage-driven and so statistically driven. That thing plays on your mind. All these things are important. I love Jordi Fernandez, but unfortunately, if you believe a recent report by Doug Smith, I personally don't love Doug Smith. Sorry, Doug. Personally, not a fan of Doug Smith on his opinion pieces. I am a fan of Doug Smith when it comes to information. And there was some great information presented here by Dougie Boy on the head coaching search, courtesy of the Toronto Star. And I'm not going to make you read all this. In summary, in short, what we learned is that Steve Nash is out of the running for the head coaching search at the moment. Jordi Fernandez is out of the running for head coach at the moment. So, we had some information that they were part of the final cast of interviewees. Rumblings that they did not even get that interview. Rumblings that maybe they did, but they're not going to be considered any further. The Raptors are funneling down to the very few. They're whittling it down to the very few in the head coaching search. So here we are. Raptors, I thought they were down to about 4. It appears as though they are potentially down to 2. And I still feel like, and I said it last time, Scariolo is in the driver's seat. I'd be happy with Sergio Scariolo. I've talked about him a bunch in the channel as well, in the streams and videos. I think Scariolo would make a great fit for the Toronto Raptors as their next head coach. But another one also involved in this one is an interesting one. Haven't spoken about him too much, but Darko out of the Memphis Grizzlies staff, Rajakovic, I believe is how you say his last name. He's another one heavily linked in the head coaching search. But Fernandez, who he's super big on, seems to be done. Steve Nash, who are super low on, seems to be done as well. So, regardless, we can move on the Fernandez thing. I think Sergio Scariolo brings a lot. But what the kind of head coaching search is looking for, what it seems like we're looking for, and as I was alluding to in the intro, why it feels to me like this team is set on another season of this core is we're very, very much looking at offensively driven coaches. We're looking at coaches who are very detail-oriented with their offense. Kenny Atkinson in particular, extremely detail-oriented with his offenses. Super analytically driven, super analytically driven. Very, very modern approach to the way basketball is played, which would be a nice breath of fresh air, I think, to this team as well. At least for me, because I'm very analytically driven in the way I process basketball as well, so I think it'd be kind of cool to see that. But also for Scariolo. Scariolo has coached all over Europe, has had success with the Spanish national team, has had success at the club level in multiple countries, in Italy, in Russia, I believe, in Spain as well, at club level as well, not 100% sure there. Was a Raptors assistant during their championship run. He knows the ins and outs of the game. He knows how to design an offense, and I think that'd be a very interesting candidate for the Raptors to get as their next head coach. It's looking to me, not certainly, but very likely as if Kenny Atkinson and Scariolo are the head honchos top two. But it also is looking to me as though we're kind of chilling. We're kind of chilling here. It looks like once again we're in no rush. I was saying last week, I think this Raptors reveal is imminent. We are on the cusp of learning who the next head coach is. I kind of feel like they're once again at this stage of we can wait a little bit longer. Also there's Adelman on the Denver Nuggets, who's coaching in NBA Finals. They may want to wait for him. There's also Chris Quinn of the Miami Heat. Maybe we're waiting a little bit for him. So we're discussing these guys. I believe Sergio Scariolo is still coaching his team as well. So we're waiting, and we're taking our time here. For people who don't really know the typical involvement of the head coach in the NBA draft process, typically they're not really involved. I think it'd be nice for them to have some sort of say, some sort of, hey, I like this guy type of thing. But ultimately, draft day comes down to, as Doug Smith even mentioned in the article, Dan Tolzman, assistant GM, is typically involved with the most with the draft. Obviously, Masai, Ujiri, his side of it's important as well. Bobby Webster as well, important factors. But while they're focusing a lot on the coaching search, Tolzman is focusing a lot on the draft. So the head coach coming in, it's not really going to make a ton of difference when it comes to the NBA draft. So we do have time to wait. We do have time to pick out the next head coach. And right now, if you're looking for a head coaching position, well, we are the only one. So there's not going to be anybody pulling out of the race. Likely, it's not going to be anybody saying, I don't want the job, because it's the only job available. If you want to be an NBA head coach, well, this is what you got type of thing. It's not as if this is a bad coaching gig. It's just this is the one left, so we don't have to worry about any other coaches getting snapped up. I don't feel as though the Raptors were truly interested in any of the coaches that did get a head coaching job this offseason. Frank Vogel didn't look like we were gonna want him. Nick Nurse, obviously we didn't want him. Adrian Griffin, if we wanted to make him a head coach, we would have, but we didn't. So he had the opportunity to go to Milwaukee Bucks. I think they would have had interest in Monty Williams. It looked like Monty really didn't want to coach, but the Pistons just threw more and more and more and more money into the whole thing. So I don't think we missed out on anybody that we truly wanted. So this whole coaching thing, somebody's even mentioning it here. Just because, there's reports here that Fernandez is out, that Nash is out, it doesn't mean that they can't come back in. It doesn't mean that they all of a sudden can't come back into the fold of this coaching search. Maybe for the time being, but also maybe they do come back into it at some point. Maybe Doug Smith is wrong and they never left. We don't have the information necessary to paint the entire picture. We just have all of these nibbles of information here, these little tiny pieces of information that we're trying to piece together to paint the picture. We just kind of struggle to do that. It's like taking a shredded sheet of paper and it's shredded this way, and we're trying to put it all back together, and it's taking a while. We don't have all the pieces, but we can kind of make out a little bit of it here and there. So that's the complication with this whole ordeal that makes it complicated, but also, hey, it's a very pivotal point for our franchise. It's very important for us to make sure that we're getting the right guy for our team going forward. This is an important step. We're on the certainly downward trend, obviously, from that NBA championship. How far are we going to go down? We're going to start to go up. We're going to go down to go up. These are important times to show us if this is going to be a case of we're going to get back to where we want to be at the top of the NBA, or is this team going to continue to fall? And this head coaching hire has huge ramifications towards that. So take your time. Make sure it's the right guy. I'm getting a little antsy here. I wouldn't say I'm getting impatient, but maybe to a certain degree, I want to know who it is. I want to get this over with, but I can appreciate them wanting to take their time and making sure that they find the right guy for the job. But signs are pointing towards an offensively driven coach, which points towards the team keeping this core together for another season. We really handcuffed ourselves with that Jakob Poeltl trade because it's kind of like the only option is continue to try and win. So that's the stage that we're at right now. Disagree, agree. Maybe I don't quite agree with it. It's just my belief. Masai Ujiri, he's bought on this core. And I actually spoke to a supporter of the channel this weekend. Just was out shopping, ran into a supporter of the show. Good experience. And he was saying, he said it kind of best here. He thinks that Masai Ujiri is really attached to these players, maybe a little bit too attached to these players. And I do feel as though that could be the case. So the core will be remaining together. But hey, Kenny Atkinson, Sergio Scariolo, I like it. Kenny Atkinson certainly growing on me. There was a report that Scariolo's last interview got postponed, and instead they're going to be doing it on Skype. Perhaps that's like been a commenter, Josh in chat actually just mentioned the same thing. I believe that's because I would guess it's his team advancing. I don't know. I didn't look into the whole situation, but what it did confirm is Scariolo got another interview. Maybe it's just because online he lowers his chances, but Scariolo, Kenny Atkinson look to be in the driver's seat. For me, Fernandez, Nash, according to Doug Smith, out of the race. That's where we're at.